Welcome to Parenting Matters, and I'm your host, Brenda Reddick. I am so excited today to have our guest, Officer Sutton. Officer Sutton, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for being here and inviting me here. I have been an officer for today 31 years. I have worked with all types of people, cultures. My career has led me to see a lot of things and do a lot of things. And I am so grateful that I have been able to do what I've been able to do. But the children were the ones that I really sort of zoned in on when my career started taking off a little bit and I was more experienced and saw quite a few things that were going on. So I'm just here today to add whatever I can and hope and pray that it helps somebody with their child in some way whatsoever. If I am able to say one thing that will help a mother, father, or even an aunt or grandmother, whoever's raising kids nowadays, that is what I'm looking forward to doing.
All right. And we wanted to congratulate you on your 31 years.
Thank you.
That is awesome.
It's been a milestone. Thank God.
Okay, talk to our parents a little bit, Officer Sutton, and let them know some things that we can do as a community as well to reach out to our youth, to keep them out of detention centers.
Well, as a child myself growing up, I'm one of 7 children in a big family, and you always had somebody telling you what to do when you're the 5th child among 7. So listening was one of the biggest things that, as I got a little older, I realized I didn't do a lot of as a child. And I think that's what some of the kids nowadays, they don't really listen because of the way that things are being said to them. I had a young man tell me one time, he said, I don't listen to older people. I said, why? He said, because they're always shouting at me or yelling at me or telling me what I ain't no good. And I'm like, I can understand that. When I was in the law enforcement realm, which I still am, dealing with children was very complicated because not knowing their background didn't give me a whole lot of room to help them. But once I got to know them and their parents and what was going on, then and only then is when I was able to help them in any way that I could. The juvenile justice system, just in North Carolina, because that's the only area in my career I have seen a lot of kids go through the court systems in what we call juvenile court. When I worked in Pender County, we had juvenile court 1 day a month. So if you were a juvenile and you committed a crime, you had to wait. And then, you didn't get your day in court. 30 days later or 30 days later, things were put off. They were rescheduled. It just amazed me how the system actually worked. But children that did not have boundaries, I found didn't have parents in the home that communicated with each other. One parent is raising this way, another parent is raising that way. Not that I'm knocking that. It's just that I found a lot of differences in homes when I was working in law enforcement with juveniles. When kids would run away, when kids would overdose, because all these things are real. They happen then, they still happen now. And then as the law enforcement officer dealing with them, you would ask them questions of, why did you do this? Why did you not go talk to somebody? And they would tell me they didn't have anybody to talk to. They didn't trust anybody. They didn't trust older adults. My sister did this. My brother did this. So they emulated what they saw. And it started in their home. So therefore, they would take these different things that they saw and conversations they heard to school, where they would spread that among their peers. And then it was like a disease. It would spread and spread and spread. And you would see it in other children. And dealing with them would make it a little difficult because, that old saying, if your friend jumps off a bridge, you gonna jump off a bridge? Well, that's what it was dealing with juveniles, because that peer pressure was so strong, and they felt like that they had that outside family at school among their peers, because they felt like their peers loved them better than some of the people in their families. And I thought, really? But that's your mother, that's your father, that's your brother. Well, they don't care about me. How? I said, why would you say that? They would tell me, because I go home, I'm left by myself. I said, you're 9 years old, you're 10 years old, whatever the age. When I go home, my dad comes home, he's drunk. He beats my mom. My brother smokes dope. I found it in his room. I've heard all of that, and I'm like, wow, you know. And from the younger kids is where it's very shocking. It's truly shocking to know these things are going on. Nobody is perfect by any means. My dad would go out, pick them up, take them home, things like that. I've seen people that were on some type of controlled substance. At the time, I didn't know what it was, because I was young. I'm like, why is he acting the way he's acting? You know. And then you see these things, and when you grow up, you're like, I don't want that. I don't want that for me. And when I started having a family, I didn't want it for my family. We're not perfect. We had things in our family, but I tried my best to do things a better way. I try not to be product of my environment, so to speak. There are numerous people that have a lot of issues in their home, things that stem from their childhood that they've never dealt with. And I think these things have sort of poured out into their family and onto their children. And I think as parents, one of the worst things we can do is not listen to our children. When we listen to them, they tell us things in their own way. They might not come right out and say, hey, this is what's going on. They may say, oh, I know about that. And if you're a parent, that needs to catch your ear, because depending on what that is, it might be a TV movie where they see suicide being committed. So you're like, how does he know about suicide at 11 or 12 or 10 or whatever his age is, you know? And then you start that conversation. You sit down and you start the conversation with him. You say, well, how do you know about suicide? Talk to me about that. You know, have you ever got to a point where you felt like that? Do you know anybody that has ever felt like that? That you know or hang around or as your age, things like that. And I think those are the conversations we as parents, we need to have. We really don't want to have, because sometimes the information you get, you really don't want it, but you have to deal with it. Once it's put out there in the environment, go ahead and deal with it. I know parents that say, if my child asks me about something, I tell them. And I'm like, you know, if they ask about it, why not?
If they're ready.
Right.
Socially, you know.
Exactly, because all kids aren't. My kids, when they would go to school, they would come home and ask me about things. And I said, how do you know that? One of their friends told them. And I was like, wow. You know, and at the age they were, and I didn't think that they were mature enough to know or have that conversation, but they asked about it. So I gave them just some kind of fly-by-night answer to appease them for that time. But later on, thinking later that I should have had a little bit more in-depth conversation with them about it, so that in the future maybe they wouldn't do these things. You never know. But children just, they absorb everything. They don't always understand the things that they absorb, but they see a lot. And now today, with a lot of social media, with a lot of different things going on that they have access to, I think we have to supervise what we allow them to see and talk about.
Yes, definitely.
My grandchildren are young, and when they come to my house, they know the phone goes on grandma's dresser. They don't get to stay on all day and all night. I can't monitor what they're doing, but I would love to know what they're doing. But I stay on it. I said, but you're not home. So, you know, they wanted to eat on the couch, on the floor. No, we come to the table. That's what we do. That's what the table is in the house for. Things like that. And I think those are the things that you instill in them that will go with them, and that will mean something to them when they have their families.
Yes.
The kids that I dealt with a lot were more left by themselves to raise themselves. And a lot of it was because parents had to work outside the home. That I understand. You and I, we had a village to help raise us. And
Yes.
I thank God for it. People looked out for you. We came up in a time where your neighbors looked out for you. They knew what was going on across the street or down the road or whatever. And people actually talked to each other and not talked about each other, you know, to a point to where we're not going to help Miss Brenda because she's this type of person or that type of person. They probably did talk about you behind closed doors, but they still was there to help you.
Yes.
So, and I think a lot of those old things need to come back, which they may not ever. I don't like to think I'm living in a fantasy world, but I think a lot of things can change, but we have to put things out there to where this is the attention and this is what needs to be talked about, looked at, checked on. There are several resources for parents, but parents have to seek those resources. We live in a county that there's not as many resources as we would like, but I think if we initiate, why do we not have this in my town? Why do we not have this in my town? Then those things might come, but it's going to take the people to do it.
Yes.
The children see the parents in the home as well as their brothers and sisters, and they're going to emulate that every time. It never fails, and that's what they're going to put out there for their life when they get out there on their own, because that's what they saw done all their life. So if they saw bad done all their life, they're going to accept that that's the way I should live and I should be. And that's not always the case. You don't have to do that. There's several people that I know that grew up in tough situations, but they have blossomed into beautiful young ladies and young men. And that can be the same for any child that wants to do it. We hear a lot of these stories when the Olympics come up, where all these kids have had hard roads, but now they're in the Olympics.
Exactly.
And never thought they would be there. But they had somebody that said maybe a kind word, encouraged, inspired, prayed for, watched out for. It just, you know, amazes me how some of those stories come out of those kids like that, and then they blossom into an Olympic athlete.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done here, anywhere, but we have to grasp those children as a community.
Right.
The community has to step up as well. We have people that don't have children for whatever reason or didn't ever have any kids. That person can still be a mother to somebody, a father to somebody in some way. Whether you say encouraging things to them or whether you take them under your wing and you give them a ride to basketball practice, you make sure they get to graduation. Anything that can be done, you would be surprised. I know, and I'm going to mention Steve Harvey mentioned about one of his school teachers.
Okay.
When he made it to where he was successful, he went back and thanked her.
Yes.
Because I think he said something to the point that she said he was going to just be a clown. He wasn't going to be anything. Well, look at him now, you know.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and he thanked her for saying that. Sometimes the negative is what will get you to motivate yourself and encourage you to do better.
Yes,
You'd
it
be
will.
surprised.
Yes, it will.
Because you know you're going to say to yourself, I'm not that person that they said I am. And you know down deep inside you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with children in the criminal justice system, a lot of them had this sort of lost look in their eyes. And I used to wonder to myself, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that look come from? Where did it start? And that, you could see like a darkness in them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them wanted to be worse than they were, you
Yes.
know, but they really weren't.
Yes.
And when you break them down, the tears come,
Right.
and then they start telling you things, and I'm like, wow. So you're not as hard as you thought you were.
Right.
And some of them would kind of cling to you, and that depends on how you dealt with them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go in there and shame them, belittle them, talk down to them, demean them. You can't do those things. You have to, even in the position I was in, I had to learn to listen. And I would just listen. And then I would tell them, I said, now, if I had a recorder, I would let you hear what you just said. I said, you told me a lot without telling me everything. And I would ask, are you that person that you just described? And they would say no. I said, do you want to be that person? No. Well, then why are you doing it? They couldn't tell me. They had no rhyme or reason why they could tell me. And I said, wow. You know, I didn't touch or affect as many as I would have liked to, but I did a few, and I know the few that I did, because now that as I said, I've been in it as long as I have seen some of them have their own families.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the day that I met you, you know, I didn't say anything like that, but I thought the day I met you, you thought was the worst day of your life. but now look at you. So it is possible to dream those dreams and do what you want to do, but you got to want to do it yourself, because you got to be your first and foremost. The only person that's going to do it inside is you. You gotta really just assess yourself. Do I want to be this person all my life, or do I want to be a better person? And then you got to work towards that better person. And I think that if you start doing better and other people see you start doing better, they won't have a problem helping you.
That's right.
We're living now where in this rural area we have gangs. And I remember being young seeing gangs on TV, not gangs in the area I lived in.
Exactly.
I mean, we had popular little groups in school, but we didn't call them gangs. But it's scary now, because if the children don't have that love and attention in the home, that gang is going to give it to them. And when that gang gets a hold of them, it's not going to let go. There is no way out of the gang. There's never been a way out of the gang. I used to tell kids that thought they wanted to be in gangs or were in gangs, I said, how many old gang members do you know that are still living today? I said, tell me. Or are they not in prison? Where are they? Have you seen a 90-year-old gang member? You seen a 70-year-old gang member? I said, they die young.
Yes.
Why? Because they're out there in the streets. Doing what? Nothing. Frivolously just doing what they do. For what? For the gang? For a name? For popularity? I said, that's not what you want to do. I said, do the things that interest you. And I had one young man tell me, he said, I like to draw. I said, well, why do you not draw? He said, I do in my room.
Wow.
And he hides his art. He used to hide it. I said, why are you hiding? They'll think I'm a punk if they know I'm doing this.
Oh.
I said, really? Why do you care what they think? But he was in too deep. He couldn't get out. And I thought, it's sad. So I told him, I said, why don't you send some of your art to where it can be looked at? And this was during the era of the computers. I said, you can send it off easily.
Yeah.
Somebody can look at it and tell you if you have any talent. He didn't want to do it. He didn't have that encouragement that he needed to do it.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, okay. But our children have a lot of gifts. They just have to be cultivated. A lot of gifts. The church I attend, we did a mission project, and it was at a high school. And all we did was pass out simple little snacks in the mornings. Passed out snacks. We did it on Wednesday mornings, did it every Wednesday morning. To see the faces on some of those kids. And we would say, something funny to make them smile, or something encouraging, or something inspirational, to just give them a word, for the day. And we did not realize what we were doing until the kids told us. It meant a lot. That breakfast bar meant a lot.
Exactly.
It meant a lot to them. Some kids didn't have breakfast that morning. Some couldn't afford breakfast that morning.
Right.
So, it's the simple things. It's the little things that you do that I think count more than the big things. I really do. Because that saying that says, people are always going to know how you treated them, and they are. I've had some older people in my day to say some things to me that I thought they shouldn't have said, and it hurt me, but I didn't let them know it did. And I had people that encouraged me and motivated me too, and that on the opposite hand worked much better.
Yes.
And I respected the people that talked to me in a positive way opposed to the people that talked to me in a negative way. And I think we do a lot of that to our children. We have a young man now at our church that plays the drums, the keyboard, and he can play guitar. And we were starting these conversations, and I asked him, I said, you tell me what the young people, why they shy away from things like this and, things that we were trying to do. And he told me, he said, because adults don't listen to what they have to say. They don't want to hear their input on anything. They think they don't know anything. And this is a bright young man.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. And I told him, I said, I thank you for telling me that. So even with my children and children that hung around my children and children that I come in contact with, I try to say something positive, or ask them what's going on. Why are you feeling this way? Why? Yesterday, my husband and I, we went out to dinner, and a young man that we mentored, him and his brother, he saw my husband's truck and pulled up, and got out. He said, I had to speak because I saw Mr. Dennis' truck. And he's doing well. And I am so thankful that he is doing well. And he is talking about going to get his escort's license and doing different things. And I'm telling you, when I first encountered that little man, he was very angry, very negative.
Yes.
He had some hate built up.
Yes.
And some things that went on in his family. And I thought, wow.
Yes.
And to see him blossom the way he has, I didn't do anything but just thank God.
I know.
Because I know it can be done.
Yes.
And he tells us whenever he sees us constantly that he thanks us.
Yes.
And we didn't do anything. We just took him to church. We took him to Pizza Hut. We did a lot. We did a little things. That's all we did. That's all we did.
Yes.
So I just enjoy doing what I can for the kids when I'm able.
Well, we certainly thank Officer Sutton for her input, and she gave us a lot of information, and we just want to say to her, thank you for all you have done for our youth so far, and our communities are going to be better because of you, and we thank you.
I thank you for having me, and I hope parents that you all will at least just try to listen. They're not always right, but just listen. I think that's the key.
We thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Parenting Matters.
Are you hungry? Do you like soul food? Come visit us today at a Blessing Soul Food restaurant located at 919 College Street, Clinton, North Carolina. Order your plate to go or to dine in. Call us today, 910-305-5459. See you soon. Struggling to manage your finances? Are your books unorganized? With over 20 years of experience, Double D Resources can help you with your bookkeeping and accounting needs. Set up a free no-obligation consultation today to learn more about how we can assist you. Call us or scan the